Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Maria Merchant, Senior Marketing Manager at Texas, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. We're here for a panel discussion titled Beyond the Hype, Building Smarter, Resilient Supply Chains with AI. AI is top of mind for many of us, and today's session will focus on practical ways it can help supply chains become smarter and more resilient. Let me introduce our panelists today. We've got Rex Alstrom. Rex is the Chief Strategy Officer at Texas, helping shape product direction and ensuring our customers maximize the value of data and AI. Carly Cohen is the VP of Partnerships and Operations at KPI Digital. They're a consulting firm that specializes in solving complex business challenges, leveraging data and AI. And last but not least, we have Evan Colmenares. Evan is the Pharmacy Manager for Analytics and Technology at UNC Health, a not-for-profit integrated healthcare system owned by the state of Carolina. Thank you all for joining us. And with that, let's dive in. So around the topic of data foundations and integration, everyone talks about AI, but the foundation is always data. Many organizations are still dealing with silos or relying on IT-managed data lakes. So the question is, what are the key steps required to prepare and unify data for AI and analytics in supply chains? And how do vendor solutions fit into existing corporate IT landscapes? Evan, why don't you take this question?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I think that as you mentioned, data is the backbone of everything and is so important and sometimes the hardest part of the whole process. So it's really important to be working with clean, ideally structured data that can be connected across your various sources. So in the healthcare system side of things, we're usually thinking of there's the electronic health record, your ERP, your inventory management system, and that might be the biggest three, but there may be 50 or 60 more systems that you're trying to combine data across completely siloed systems, as well as systems with maybe more legacy databases or structure and inconsistent formats. From the pharmacy side of things, I often think of on the United States side of things, the National Drug Code or NDC. And technically that is a 10-digit number, but most interoperable systems pad it and make it an 11-digit number. But that zero goes in one of three places, depending on the format of the NDC. And, if your systems can't figure out that these are all actually the same drug, you're going to run into a lot of issues when you come to trying to layer on any kind of analytics or AI on top of it. In terms of, vendor solutions and unifying, cleaning your data, you can sometimes engage vendors to help you clean your data for you. Certainly that can be a little bit more complicated or tricky if you're the only expert on your data and you have to bring someone in that may be less familiar with working on it, but that are experts at cleaning data and getting it combined into some sort of data warehouse. You can also leverage vendors that connect or stream data to a centralized location, so you aren't nearly as reliant on building out your own enterprise data warehouse and doing all of the alignment yourself. But I think, finding those vendors that are modular and able to join in your IT stack, especially depending on how much investment your IT group has already made on their enterprise data warehouse and their foundations of data, is really important. And I think that, Carly and Rex will definitely have more to add to this, but I always want to give a shout out to the importance of data governance and making sure that there's high quality data, that it's documented when possible, and of course, keeping compliant as necessary to take care of our patients.
Yeah, excellent point, Evan. And I would also say it's really important based on the use case that you're trying to drive with that data, that you really understand the full scope of the data requirements. So as Evan mentioned, there are a lot of different sources of data, some internal to your applications, but also external data sources. In the case of healthcare, organizations like ASHP or the FDA or others, maybe you're connecting into supplier networks. So if you're looking at whether it's traditional reporting, whether it's some type of advanced analytic, or whether you're implementing an agentic AI solution, which I know is all the rage right now, you have to really consider what are the data sets that are required in total to be able to drive an effective outcome, because there are a lot of silos and there are loads of systems. So you want to make sure that you're focused down on the data that really matters. And to Evan's point, that it's cleansed and organized and harmonized so that the output of your work delivers value.
Carly, did you want to add anything there?
Sure. In terms of different strategies that are effective, I think there's a few different approaches. I think Evan and Rex really nailed it when talking about fragmented data from different systems, ERPs, WMS, procurement, or clinical systems. They all store data differently, right? So the fragmentation, they're really slowing down decision-making, reduces visibility. So unifying all this together is really what's essential. And there's really two kind of approaches in the way you can do this. One is centralized by building a governed single source of data with business rules on top, privacy, confidentiality, comes back to that data governance we were talking about before, or more of a decentralized approach where you create that unified view without physically moving any of the data, which you can then apply the governance across distributed sources, like with a lot of people are calling Microsoft Fabric today and using that for. So I think it kind of comes back to choosing what's the right use case, like we were discussing. And then once you have that single source of truth, that your data is all in one spot, you can do things like standardizing SKUs across different suppliers, which can reduce duplication of errors. And that's where the AI comes in, becoming easier and easier once you have that solid data foundation.
So my next question is around AI maturity and practical value. Agentic AI and advanced analytics are hot topics right now, as you know, but there's always a gap between hype and reality. So Rex, I'll ask you to start with this one. How mature are these technologies today, and where are they already delivering measurable improvements in supply chain operations?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my first comment, there's definitely a lot of hype around agentic AI. And I think my caution here is that what you're going to see from a lot of vendors, and I'm with a vendor, is that everybody is calling everything agentic, right? Now that's the new buzzword, anything you do is an agentic AI implementation. And the reality is that that's not quite right. There's still a lot of agentic architectures, which for our audience, if you're not familiar with it, it refers to in having agents, individual agents that are monitoring or making decisions or evaluating certain parts of the data that we talked about earlier. And so it's very useful because you can have it focus on a particular area that you have concern. But then typically these agents roll up most often today into like a large language model implementation where you have what's called a supervisory node that's asking the questions based on your input through the large language model to the individual agents, depending on the context, getting answers, and then formulating a solution for the person at the end of the agentic workflow. So most of the implementations that I've seen are very immature in that they can do that. Like I can look at my inventory and I could draw concerns or conclusions with one agent. I can look at my spend on another. I can look at demand on another. And while that's useful, the goal of agentic long-term is that it can actually start learning from the decisions that are made. And then it can also start taking proactive actions on your behalf. Maybe initially, it'll suggest a solution and then ask you if you'd like this solution to actually automate and implement. But eventually, they'll run autonomously. And the other thing that I think is very exciting in agentic, which could bring a lot of value to supply chain, is that people are publishing these agents and making them publicly available. So the ability to not just build your own agentic workflows, but to connect to external agents. Very simple example would be weather or disruptive events in shipping channels or other things that may ultimately impact your supply chain. And so While they're immature today, you can expect that in a very short period of time, they're going to mature quickly, and they're going to really optimize some of the end-to-end headaches that can be removed from having to do this work manually.
Carly, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think I'd like to add, I think from an agentic AI approach, I completely agree with Rex. And I think if we go a little more broad in terms of AI, I think we're seeing already quite a lot of measurable value from AI in supply chain, particularly a lot in anomaly detection and triggering alerts, a little bit of Rex was saying before. For example, when systems can automatically trigger replenishment when stock levels are low. In healthcare, what really means having critical items at the right place at the right time, whether it's surgical kits or life-saving drugs, and the hospitals being able to reorder and automating those activities is essential. And AI is helping some of these very simple automated tasks that don't require too much of that human intervention or learning or strategy. So we see a lot of the value get, but by these very narrow and specific use cases, like predictive inventory as an example. So I think we're moving more and more towards that autonomous decision making, so that orchestrating systems can actually do it all on their own. But I don't think we're there just yet. I think there's a lot more validation, a lot more testing that's required, especially in regulated environments like healthcare. So the gap is narrowing. We're not there, but I think AI-driven automation is already delivering efficiency, cost saving, and improved patient care today.
Yeah, I think to jump off of something Rex mentioned is the branding is really good right now with agentic AI and people calling it out. And I think that you can look back 2, 3, 4 years ago where everything was just AI. And was it really AI or was it maybe like a fancy graph? And so, talking with your vendors that are bringing you products and asking them the tough questions, or finding a partner in the consulting community that can help you ask those questions and assess these tools before you bring them in. I think that what I see a lot of branded as agentic AI is really robotic process automation, or RPA. And it's not AI at all. You defined the process and told it what to do. And so it's doing exactly that. And it's not actually learning or making any decisions for itself.
So recent disruptions have highlighted just how critical resilience and agility are, especially in healthcare supply chains. What role can AI and analytics play in helping supply chains withstand disruptions to ensure just-in-time supply and optimize inventory while reducing waste and cost?
Yeah, so I think we've touched on it a little bit here and there as we've been going, but I think that really what we're seeing a lot of role of AI and analytics is the predicting surges, understanding demand planning, forecasting future demand. So example, predictive analytics, well, we know every year that there's a flu season. And so in the pharmacy perspective, we know certain medications are used when we're treating the flu, and that we may need to forecast based on historic demand. Well, when is that going to happen? But there's also the chance to bring in third-party data that, Rex mentioned earlier of, have their Google, I believe still publishes, but certainly historically published their flu trends. And you could see the spikes when people start searching, runny nose, what temperature is a fever? Like, is there a home flu test? I think, COVID certainly messed that up for a little bit in terms of the trends and when people are Googling things. But, what can you pair in and say like, oh, well, we know in our area when people start, searching for these terms or the Google flu trends, or, social media starts having increased pings on these certain tags, that it might be time for us to bring things in. In pharmacy, we do a lot of JIT, just-in-time supply, because when a vial of a certain medication may cost $10,000 or $20,000. I can't have 5 on the shelf just waiting. If my normal usage is once every other week or one every other week. And so leveraging AI to tell me what I should be stocking, what should the minimum quantity on hand I need be? How do I manage my waste? Where are my products about to expire? And can I redistribute them within my network or find another creative way to use them up? And then how can I save costs by purchasing smarter and having less overstock where relevant?
Yeah, and again, adding on to that, there is an opportunity, I think, within the market as a whole to also look at how is supply chain operating across networks, right? So if you look at healthcare, you look at a large integrated delivery network with 15, 20, 30 hospitals, hundreds of outpatient clinics. They're constantly getting signals from the supply chain itself in terms of what potentially could be coming up short, right? Are allocations dropping for a particular drug or a particular device or something that, is going to be critical? If we're able to look across networks, then the ability not just to see it happening at one place, but to see the trends. And this is a great place, again, to use AI to say, hey, that looks like that might just be limited to a particular distributor or a particular manufacturer or a particular region, or it's more widespread. We're seeing this across all regions, right? Is it a growing trend? And then be able to combine that with additional information or look at other databases that give us information for when shortages are occurring. So considering what's happening local, considering what's happening across the supply chain on major events, and then even across networks is going to open up a really big opportunity in the future to become much more accurate at predicting supply chain disruption and being able to take action much sooner so that you can correct it.
That's what I was just going to add, because AI right now is strengthening the resilience by making the supply chain more predictive and actionable. So it's the actionability now that's really giving that resilience. For example, agentic AI now, you can flag if the shipment isn't rerouted today, tomorrow a hospital is going to be missing critical equipment or critical products. So that's coming back to what Evan was saying in terms of forecast accuracy, because now AI models are really combining clinical demand signals, distributor data, and external factors to optimize that inventory for sufficient safety stock, which is not right. It's just that just in time, because like you were saying, can't have too many products in stock. But what we're seeing a lot now is navigating through these global disruptions, the tariffs, shipping delays, and geopolitical shifts. A lot of companies are increasingly using digital twins. And we're hearing this term a lot, digital twins. This could mean really, simulating the machinery that you have. That could also be just simulating different processes. So it allows a lot of simulations and what if scenarios. Let's say you're changing your supplier, you're shifting shipping routes. So before committing to actually go with these resources, which gives leaders the realistic view of their costs and risks before going with it. So that allows them to be a little more resilient as well by looking at these scenarios in advance.
On the topic of human and machine collaboration, so no matter how advanced the technology is, people still remain at the center of supply chain operations. How should organizations strike the right balance between AI-driven recommendations and human expertise? And what strategies help build trust, adoption, and the right education for teams? Evan, why don't you take this question?
Sure. So I think that this is always a hot topic, and I'm sure everyone that's listening has had someone ask them, is AI going to replace my job? And I think, figuring out the perfect solution of implementing AI generally, at least, today, I can't speak to what it's going to look like in 20 years, but, right now, it's really a human in the loop approach. So AI is your decision support tool. So if you're a clinician or you've worked clinically and you get your pop-up on your electronic medical record saying, hey, do you think this patient might have sepsis? By no means is the tool meant to order medications or interventions on a patient without someone there. It's really supposed to help you with your own judgment, but it's still your judgment that's making the final decision. At least that's what we see things today in healthcare. But in terms of everything else, building trust is key. If you spend a lot of money implementing an AI tool and then all of your staff ignores it, you've got none of the benefit and you've spent a lot of money on it. So you're getting, double the negative. But do pilots, bring in champions from your areas that want to learn, that are excited. There's someone in all of your areas that uses ChatGPT every day or another LLM, and they're, always asking it questions, and they've stopped searching things manually. But find those people and help build feedback loops to make things better based on their input. And then always education and change management. Change is hard. It's scary whether you're implementing a new software or an AI-based tool. And so finding the cross-functional teams that can collaborate and bring something to fruition, but find, again, as I said before, with the trust and adoption, those super users, those champions, and find early adopters that are going to help you get out there. The focus, and this kind of goes back to the previous question as well, is that, there's staff shortages too. And so we're not always just talking about drug shortage or a physical goods shortage. Is how can we use this to help address the tasks that are less desirable, that maybe make people leave the role and take a new role? If we can cut those out, can we have greater retention and greater staff satisfaction?
I love that.
Yeah, this is exactly where I was going to go with it, because people are always going to remain central in one way or another, but their role is evolving. We see that human expertise is really training and guiding the AI, where the AI is taking on those repetitive and time-sensitive tasks that aren't really scalable for people alone to do these days. In healthcare supply chains, AI can recommend the optimal ordering or substitution for products when a product is unavailable. But humans have to validate these decisions. They have to ensure the clinical and ethical considerations are respected as well. And over time, the AI is learning from these interventions. So eventually, the reliance on humans will slowly decrease. The trend is towards the more autonomous systems, but people will continue to always shape the governance and the rules around what the AI is generating as results. And it's exactly what you said, Evan, in terms of building that trust. We have to ensure that clear governance, transparency, and education is right hand in hand with the AI. And staff had to understand not just the what, but why is the AI recommending certain results or certain answers, because humans really still have to keep the control over the AI, even if they're generating more of the results. So the shift is really going to allow people to focus on higher value work like strategy, innovation, and teaching the systems itself, while AI manages the volume, heavy tasks for operational decisions.
Yeah, and exactly on that point, that's going to put pressure on the vendors, right? Because the vendors are looking at AI, they're looking at what is the coolest, splashiest thing that I can put in here, and it's really going to impress the market and our customers. But I think it's going to take a very customer-centric engagement to be able to figure out where you can leverage AI to help, right? So we can use AI to automate and solve a lot of things. Of course, there are a lot of different types of AI and AI implementations. But if you don't really get in and understand where is that mundane work, what are the things that are difficult to do right now with the systems I have, and are there opportunities to then automate or make that simpler so that the quality of life, the quality of engagement, especially for care workers, is better? Because at the end of the day, clinicians don't want to spend time in applications. They want to spend time delivering patient care. Large healthcare networks, it's about quality of care to the patient and the quality of the outcome. And so, again, looking at from the consumer's point of view, what does that mean in terms of where we should put new features and capabilities into product, has to take a customer first approach in terms of discovering where those opportunities lie.
Yeah. Okay, so last question for the day. Looking into the future, business intelligence, it's been around for years, but supply chains are entering a new phase of intelligence and automation. Carly, I'd like to start with you. So looking ahead 2 to 3 years, in your opinion, what will be the biggest shifts from today's BI practices towards intelligent, resilient, collaborative supply chains? And what should organizations do now to prepare for this?
So, as a company who started with BI as their bread and butter and soul like 20, 25 years ago, we really saw the whole shift of BI was giving organizations visibility, right? Visibility into their operations and every little detail about their business, which enabled continuous improvement. But now the next 2 years, it's going to shift from visibility to actionability. I think that's what we constantly are saying and seeing with these AI agents and AI approaches and AI models, where AI is not only highlighting the issues, but they're automating responses across purchasing, warehouse flows, and logistics. So AI will move continuous improvement from manual processes to even some embedded capabilities like reducing costs or aligning supply with demand in real time. So in healthcare, this could mean, automatically adjusting distribution for surgical kits across hospitals based on upcoming procedural volumes, as an example. But to prepare, organizations really need a clear AI strategy and data strategy that's tied to their business goals. And what comes in this, you have to define where you want to reduce costs or risk, identifying high value use cases to pilot, and building the governance and integrations for your foundation now. So operational excellence has really always been the goal, but now we're leveraging AI to execute that engine so that it becomes scalable.
So Evan, why don't you take it next?
Sure. I just kind of want to say that I'm just very excited for what's to come in the next 2 years. I think that we've been talking about moving things to that more predictive and actionable state for many years, but unless you're in a very large multinational corporation, you probably haven't had the resources, computing power, or access to really get to fully predictive analytics and be using machine learning in your day-to-day business operations. But it really feels like the future is here. And so it's going to be so much more accessible with vendor partners and consulting partners for healthcare systems to have actionable agentic AI, that it's almost just like when you're using an infusion pump or something. You get an alert, it's a pop-up and says, hey, this seems odd. Are you sure you want to override and buy 3 pallets of this drug? That may not fit like what we are seeing day to day. And again, baking it into the day-to-day, almost clinical decision support of our team members.
Yeah, I think excellent points all the way around. And thinking of something to close that on, I've been in technology and in the data space and actually around AI in its early forms, even going way back to my school days. And a lot of technologies have come along through the course of my career that have been seriously transformational in terms of moving things ahead and really making a difference. But what I would say is that the pace of innovation in this space related to AI and data and the future of where we're heading now is moving at a clip like I've never seen. It's only a few years ago that the topic started coming up, and then ChatGPT came out. And now we're talking about agentic workflows. And so what I can guarantee you over the next 2 to 3 years is that you'll be shocked by how fast it's moving ahead. The vendors on the major platform level are making huge investments. The pace of innovation and real results-based products are coming out faster than ever. So if you haven't jumped into this area yet, I suggest you do, and look for good partners to help you guide that journey and make strong decisions so that you can get the best result possible.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful, and thank you to our panelists today. AI and supply chain is an evolving journey, as we've heard already, and today's session is just the beginning. So if you'd like to keep the conversation going, connect with a Texas expert to explore what's next. Thank you.